Hi, this is Lloyd, and one lady divorced her husband after 30 years of marriage. Why? She said, I divorced my husband after 30 years because we just had different perspectives on marriage. I endured the marriage just for the kids, but now that the kids are grown, I'm out. I'm out. Why did you divorce your husband? You see, his view of marriage is just different than mine. He wanted me to serve him. We had different views as relates to religion, different cultural orientation, different perspectives on how we should do marriage. We even had different views on conflict resolution. His way of parenting is just different than mine. I was grown differently, and I don't understand it. And the marriage was miserable all these years, and I endured the resentment, the disagreement, the misunderstanding. It was painful, but I waited until the kids are grown, and now I'm out. You see, that scenario could have been prevented if they only discussed a few insightful questions before or after the marriage. You see, every marriage needs a maintenance program. And the big problem with marriage is that people don't know how to communicate properly. And this is why it's important to have a list of questions. Questions that are specifically designed to cause your partner to explore deeply their habits of life, their past history, their upbringing, their past relationships, so you can understand their perspective on marriage. Let me share with you another scenario. The lady showed up in front of the judge. You see, Your Honor, my husband wants me to be physically intimate with him every day, and sometimes twice a day. This is not my idea of a marriage. And I came by here so you can submit an injunction so that he will cease expecting so much of me. That scenario could have been avoided too if they had only discussed some important questions. For example, they should have asked each other, either before the marriage or during the marriage, questions like this. What does love mean to you? How often would you like us to be physically intimate? Then, as they explore and discuss questions like this, they can discover that for the woman, for example, it's not just about the physical act. It's about understanding my heart. It's about being connected emotionally. It's about emotional connectivity. But for him, the physical act may even be more crucial. They must discuss the subject of intimacy during the relationship. And many people, because they don't have a reference point, they don't know what to talk about, so they resort to their comfort zone, which is silence, and they don't discuss the subject. Friends, these 200 questions covering the 15 fundamental components of marriage can help you to avoid disagreements, pain, and hardship due to each other's differences in expectations. Did you know that one of the primary causes of marital breakup is unmet expectations? You see, everybody enters marriage with private rules of what the marriage should be like. Everybody enters marriage with expectations. But if you never discuss each other's expectations, then you end up becoming a mind reader or expecting your partner to read your mind. In other words, the best way to understand your partner's expectations is to allow them to speak. In marriage, intimacy is about understanding your partner's psychological map, the pathways to their heart. And do not take things for granted. For what you may be thinking is not what they are thinking. You see, one of the big problems, even with men, for example, in meeting their wife's needs, is that they are trying to meet their partner's needs based on how their needs are met. And the same thing for the woman. But the fact is, men and women are wired differently. And it is only as you discuss some insightful questions, we call it the skillful use of questions, you are able to explore each other's expectations for the marriage. So you do not make assumption. For that's all some couples do. They make assumption, and many times it is false assumption. And so many in the marriage are unhappy. They're miserable. They are nitpicky. As a matter of fact, one person puts it this way: anytime you see a woman who is always miserable, she's nitpicking. She's always blaming and criticizing. You know what she's really saying? Please meet my needs. And sometimes the same goes for the man. Please meet my needs. But I'm doing all of this. How is it that you're not happy? You see, you're trying to meet their needs, but you don't know what their needs are. And that's the big problem with marriage. But friends, you know why? You're trying to be a mind reader. In other words, you fall within the mind reader trap. And you know, the most painful words in marriage are these: I thought you knew. Those words alone lead many into a bitter divorce. I thought you knew. In your marriage, stop making assumptions. Get the facts. Clarify your partner's expectations. Clarify their thought pattern. Understand their psychological map, the pathways to their heart. That's the only way you'll be able to connect emotionally and hence to build intimacy in the relationship. Friends, after 30 years working with couples and families across the world, I have carefully crafted over 200 questions covering the 15 fundamental components of marriage that you must discuss with your partner before you say I do or after you say I do. As a matter of fact, may I say this today, that if you are thinking about marriage, you are contemplating getting married, do not approach the altar. Do not repeat those vows until you have had an opportunity to discuss, to ask and discuss these important questions with your partner. And it's easy. You take one category, for example, and you discuss the questions in that category, for example, for a week. You set aside 30 minutes, whether twice per week. She answers her few questions, and then you answer your questions, and you write down the answers, and you're able to understand their perspectives for the marriage. Friends, these questions could save your marriage from a bitter divorce. Not just that. By discussing these questions, then you realize for the first time that you're able to understand each other's values, feelings, and beliefs. And that's the bedrock for intimacy. You understand each other's deep needs. This is a way to overhaul your marriage, to improve emotional connectivity, and to enhance intimacy in the relationship. So, enroll in the course today. Over 200 questions. Start discussing with your partner, and your marriage will never be the same again. Click the link below and get your copy, and I'll see you in the studio.